All right, bump map. The idea with this is we're going to be creating an animated texture and putting it onto a cube. So most of this particular tutorial is creating a wavy animated texture. So if we go look at the requirements of this particular one, what you're going to do is you're going to point the camera directly at this particular plane with which you're going to add a wave modifier to, and you're going to animate that as a series of images. So the big thing to keep in mind with all of these requirements here is you're going to be animating a wave. The node editor takes this scene with lighting and changes it into more of a kind of a vague looking shape as opposed to the direct edges that you have here. One thing to keep in mind, these offsets are not going to be correct for your particular project. I believe it's around -2 or so. So keep in mind these values you're going to have to play with, and if you have them too negative, it turns completely white. If you have them too positive, it turns completely black when you actually render it. So, things to keep in mind. So you take your camera and you actually position it directly above where it's going to be. So if I actually look at this from above, it's going to be like there. I'm going to rotate it so it looks straight down. By the way, you can also set this exactly if you want to. So you can set the focal length here, you can set clipping, and then another thing is I'm probably going to want to make this a square, so I'm going to make sure the X and Y match so that when I look through the camera, instead of being a rectangular shape, it's actually a square shape. So the basic idea is get the wave modifier down here, and then to actually render this out, I probably want to output it to like a folder on the desktop, for example, or someplace you can get to. So set your folder, and then you're going to output as PNGs, or in the example they use OpenEXR, whichever one you want to use. And then you actually hit the animation button to do all 40 frames. Once you have that, that's all step one of rendering out frames, and you should probably go look at those pictures and make sure they work. The second part of it is going to be basically UV mapping, and to a certain extent. You add an image to the surface of this thing. So when I do that, I'm going to add my material, I'm going to add an image, much in the same way we did before. And the trick is you are going to take, instead of just a single image here, you're going to take an image sequence and map it to this thing. Also, the other thing is you don't want to do flat projection, you want to do a cube so that it actually goes on all sides. And then you render this guy out as a movie, for example. So let's say that I want to take this guy, assuming I have all the images, and render it out as a movie. What I'm going to do is go over to the camera button. I'm going to switch over to one of these movies, probably AVI JPEG or MPEG, and write it out as a movie. It'll be slow to animate at first, like so in Blender, when you actually do the animation, it has to go through frame by frame and put it out as a movie file. But once you have that, then you'll actually be able to open it in Windows Media Player, and it'll be at full speed. Now, you may be asking, why go through all that work? Why not just add the modifier to the cube itself? Well, what happens is that if I actually add the wave modifier to the cube itself, the computer is actually trying to figure out all the various points in the model and moving them around and whatnot, and that actually takes a lot of computation. You may have already noticed how slow it is to render things out. Imagine if it has to compute a whole bunch more things. If you take an animated picture and just map it onto a cube, it takes the computer a lot less effort to do that. And so it's a way of actually making it so the computer can function faster without having to compute all the points.